Hi, this is Sarit Switzer, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast, a podcast devoted to the teachings of Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi as recorded in his most famous work, the Tanya. My hope for this show is to make these teachings accessible and relatable to the average person, regardless of prior Jewish education or affiliation. The episodes follow the prescribed daily study portions and are meant to serve as practical lessons in how to live your life as your true self and develop an authentic and powerful relationship with your Creator. I have personally experienced the effects the study of this work has had on me, and I'm excited to share what I can of this knowledge with you. So please join me on this journey of learning, self-growth, and connection with your source. Hi, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast. This is episode 99 for the 28th of Adar Aleph in a leap year. And today we are concluding chapter 32, the chapter all about love and loving our fellow Jew, very famous chapter in Tanya. We're really going to bring a lot of the concepts that we've been learning together and really accumulate this idea of loving our fellow Jew and how to tap into the aspects of loving our fellow Jew through learning a little bit about compassion specifically. So before we begin, I want to bring to mind a couple of things that I spoke about actually earlier on in this chapter. One was in yesterday where I talked about this girl that I saw in Shul and how my first reaction was to feel a sense of like judgmentalism or negativity towards her because I felt that she was being cold towards me. And then I switched that and I decided to give her love rather than to expect love from her. And the other one is that video that I mentioned, which I still don't know the source of where it's from, where you saw this, it was like these different scenarios of people behaving in ways that at first glance seemed really negative and really not unpleasant. And it's easy for us to judge them. And then you saw the behind the scenes and you saw the fact that there was really a lot going on for them. And once you understood the full context of where they were coming from, it actually helped the viewer to become a little bit more understanding of them. So in both of those scenarios, what I really focused on in those cases is the idea that we really shouldn't feel hatred towards these people. And in fact, we should maybe focus instead on the fact that they are struggling in ways that we don't know anything about, that maybe they're not on our level and their struggles are not our struggles and things like that. Today, we're going to take this a little bit deeper and we're going to say that even if, let's say, these people or this girl I saw in Shul, let's say, or anybody that you come into counter with, even if you conclude that this person really should have known better and you go through the entire mechanics in your mind and for whatever reason you really see that they are actually on your level and they actually should know better and should not be behaving in the way that they're behaving from, and you really should have expected more of them. Nevertheless, while maybe in this case you might say they really should have known better, I am justified thus in hating them. The Alter Rebbe is going to teach us today that while this may be true, and he doesn't contradict this, that maybe you are justified in your feeling of animosity towards them in a certain sense, there's something else that you should also take into consideration, which is that you should also be feeling compassion for such a person. Why? Where does the compassion come from? Because every single Jew has within them a spark of godliness, a godly soul that is within them. And this godly soul that is within each one of us, including me, including you, all of us, it's found in a way of exile. It's trapped deep within the body. And the more we see people behaving in ways that contradict this godly soul, while on the one hand, our first instinct might be to feel hatred or animosity or judgmentalism towards them, on the other hand, the next immediate thought that should come to mind is to feel a sense of compassion for this godly soul that's trapped within them, that's like yearning to get out. And the more we see the person acting in ways that's not allowing the godly self to manifest itself, the more compassion we should feel towards this person. And as we'll learn in this section today, when we really arouse the sense of compassion, this sense of compassion is actually stronger than hatred, and it actually dispels hatred, and it stimulates a sense of love. And this sense of love is really something which ultimately is the overriding emotion that we should feel towards our fellow Jew. And so this feeling of love towards our fellow Jew is really, really, really very essential, and what we should all be striving towards. So let's dive straight into the text and see how the Alter Rebbe breaks this down. So the Alter Rebbe says that even those people who are considered to be close to you, meaning that they are your peers, they are on par with you spiritually speaking, so to speak, they should know better, and you rebuke them, and they still did not return from their sins. So meaning you did point out to them, hey, I don't know if you realize, but this isn't okay what you're doing. And they still didn't repent. So we learned previously that it is a mitzvah to hate them. So as it says in the Gemara, so then what? So the Alter Rebbe says, true, it is a mitzvah to hate them, but it's also a mitzvah to love them. And he says both of these things are true. So how can these both of these things be true? So the Alter Rebbe says that we hate them on account of the evil that's within them. And we love them on account of the good that is hidden within them, which is the spark of godliness that is within them, that is vivifying their godly soul. So, and it's hidden within them. So if you recall, if you've been following along our podcast, hopefully you have been, we learned pretty early on about this idea that every single Jewish person has within them two souls, two forces. So if you ever feel kind of divided and like not like this cohesive person, it's because you're not really. You have these two opposing forces all the time. You have your animal self and you have your godly self, and they're constantly at war. So when we see somebody doing something that is against God's will, this is coming from the animal soul. It's not coming from the godly soul. So it's not fully them. So yes, we can hate the bad within them, but at the same time, we love the good within them. And not only that, the Alter Rebbe takes it a step further, and he says we should also arouse compassion in our heart for this godly soul, for this spark of godliness within it. Because why? Because it's a way of exile, of galus, within the evil. So it's trapped and ensnared in the sitra achra, in the other side that is predominating over it in the Rashaim, within wicked people, so to speak. So basically, again, he talks about this idea of in all of us, we have these opposing forces, the good and the bad, and it's a real war that's waging. And so in most people, really, the evil, so to speak, has a predominance over the good. This may not be, it doesn't mean that when we talk about wicked, quote unquote, people, Rashaim, it may not be what you are picturing in your mind as this like caricature, as this evil villain or something. It merely means it's the type of person who sometimes has their natural animal impulses rule over them, and they succumb to these natural impulses. So this is a lot of people. It's not a simple thing. But when this kind of thing happens in these kind of people, it's actually something that we can have a lot of compassion for this, because it means that their godly soul it doesn't mean they don't have a godly soul. They very much do have a godly soul, and they very much do have a spark of God within them. But sadly, this godly soul is trapped and exiled within these negative forces. And so we can really feel compassionate for this and be like, wow, I wish it's so sad. It's so unfortunate that this person is not manifesting their true godly self, and their true godly self is being concealed by all this shtus, all this like static that's not letting it to manifest. And when we arouse this compassion, the Alter Rebbe says, this compassion negates the hatred. And so while we had felt this hatred initially towards the negativity within them, the next feeling we have, the next emotion, is the feeling of compassion towards the godly essence that's in exile. And this compassion arouses feelings of love, as is known. And then here the Alter Rebbe brings a citation from Yeshayahu, which is from chapter 29, verse 22, where it says, Yaakov asher pada et Avraham, that literally means Yaakov who redeemed Avraham. So on a spiritual level, we know that those of you who have studied this a little bit, each one of the forefathers are considered kind of like the archetypes or the embodiments of different spiritual energies. So the energy of Yaakov is the energy of compassion. The energy of Avraham is the energy of chesed, of kindness or love. And so what the Alter Rebbe is saying here is that on a deeper level, we can understand that this statement from Yeshayahu is saying that compassion redeems love, meaning that it unlocks this hidden love that we have. And so basically a tool and a mechanism by where we can come to love our fellow Jew, because we're really supposed to love every single Jew, even those Jews which it might seemingly seem like we are called upon to hate, is to really feel and arouse this compassion towards the godliness within them. And then the last part that the Alter Rebbe says here, and he puts this in brackets, it's how he ends off this chapter, is he says that while it is true, again, he kind of wants to cover all his bases here. He says that we have to look at this statement that comes in Tehillim, chapter 139, verse 22, that was said by David HaMelech, Tachlit sinas netim, which literally means I hate them with a consummate hatred. So we see that David HaMelech, in fact, really did hate certain people. Who are these people that he hated? So the Alter Rebbe says that this is a reference to heretics and apostates that do not have a part in the Jewish people, as is taught in the Gemara in the beginning of chapter 16 of Maseches Shabbos. But this is just to explain, and we brought this up previously, as is understood in Chassidus. I believe the Rebbe talks about this, and it's talked about elsewhere as well, that nowadays people are just too ignorant to be considered heretics. In order to be a true heretic, in order to be a true atheist even, you have to know a crazy amount. And nowadays people just don't know that much. So the average heretic, quote unquote, or atheist, quote unquote, that you meet on the street nowadays really is just pretty ignorant. If you start drilling them about different things in Torah and faith and God and everything, even if it might seem like that maybe they had even a Torah education and they might proclaim to be this kind of person, but when you really get down to it, they don't really know as much as they think they know. And so nobody really falls into this category. So basically the conclusion of this chapter, in short, to sum it all up, is that we really should love everybody, and that there is no room for hatred, and that there is no room for judgment and against our fellow and feelings of hatred. And in fact, we really, really need to figure out ways to arouse love for every single Jew, regardless of their status, regardless of their level. If they're on a lower level than us, then for sure we need to do this. And it needs to be a very active, reaching out kind of love and try to draw them in. And if it's for somebody who seemingly is on our level and it doesn't seem like it's somebody that we need to teach or that kind of thing, we still need to try to arouse this love. And the way that we do this is by really tapping into and focusing on the godly soul within them and feeling compassion for the fact that they're not manifesting as what they could be, as their full potential. And this feeling of compassion will make us love them. So that's the end of the chapter. We did it. And just to kind of give a final note here is, I think this is such a beautiful chapter because there's so many different things that are written in Judaism about loving your fellow Jew and how to do this and how to think positively about your Jew and look for the good in them and all that kind of things. I really feel like this chapter really gets back to the essence of the matter and goes to the deepest level, which is like a really good way to a more straight path in a certain sense to come to that love of your fellow Jew. Because what we've learned is a few things. Let's see if we can just recap what we've learned in this chapter and try to really integrate it into the way that we think about our fellow Jew. Is that first of all, we are not as different as we might think we are. And when we look at our differences and we see our differences, these are merely superficial differences. It has to do with our body, our physicality, our animal soul, all these things. Yes, they're very different. But when we peel back those layers and we realize that that's actually not the thing that we should be focusing on, as we learned, we really should be minimizing the importance we place on our physical self. We realize that our deeper self is really our spiritual self. And when it comes to our spiritual self, we're actually all from the same place. We're actually all brethren. We all have much more in common than we have different. And when we recognize that, we can start to, first of all, feel a sense of brotherhood towards our fellow man and towards our fellow Jew. And once we feel that sense of brotherhood, we can really tap into this unconditional love the way that we feel with our families and with other people that we're related to. We also learned about how essential it is to tap into this love and to feel this love towards our fellow Jew, because our entire purpose of why we're here is to elevate the spirituality over the physicality, like minimize the physicality and bring up and elevate the spirituality, and at the same time also to draw down godliness and godly energy, specifically the light of God, into this world. And the only way that we can really do that is by being unified. So it's not only just about us, it's about a bigger purpose. It's about the entire world. So that could also motivate us to really work on loving our fellow Jew. And then we also learned about how we really shouldn't judge people and we really shouldn't hate people, because if we see somebody doing something that we disapprove of and that we would never do and goes against our values, first of all, it's very possible that they don't know as much as us. It's very possible that their struggles are not our struggles. It's very possible that they were never confronted and nobody pointed out to them that what they're doing is the wrong thing. And in that case, we actually should see the fact that we have something to offer them, and that is love. And we have the opportunity to bring them close to God because they're very far from God. And it sort of makes us recognize what our mission is and where everybody stands. And then we also finally learned about the fact that even if you really rack your brains and you're trying to make excuses for somebody and you really, really can't, and you're like, I'm sorry, this person really should have known better. I know them. They know a lot. There's no reason. I've told them numerous times that what they're doing is wrong, and they just continue to do this thing. Nevertheless, we should still love them. And the way that we can love them is that we can recognize the fact that while, yes, there's this really annoying and hateful animal self within them that's causing them to do all these bad things, they also have a godly self. They also have a godly soul. And we should really feel compassion for this godly soul, this spark of godliness that's within them, that's not allowing them to manifest as their true godly essence. And it's really, really sad. And we need to really feel this compassion towards that. And when we feel that compassion, the hatred is just going to go away. It's like we won't feel hatred. How could you feel hatred towards someone you feel so compassionate towards, And that compassion will lead us again to love. So that is the conclusion of the chapter. And tomorrow we will move on to chapter 33, and I will speak to you then. Thanks for listening to the It Is Taught podcast, hosted by Sarit Switzer. This podcast is dedicated in loving memory of my maternal grandfather, Avraham Yitzchak ben Binyamin HaKohen of blessed memory. Music by Shoshana. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the show, please share it with others and subscribe on YouTube, Apple iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to leave us a 5-star review. To find out more about the It Is Taught project, including more information on my soon-to-be published book, please visit our website, itistaught.com. To catch the latest from me, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Looking forward to speaking with you tomorrow, and until then, have a great day.